The true secret to Rome's dominance was never the disciplined soldier, but the weapon he carried. Before the clash of shields, before a single life was lost, Rome had already won the war with a piece of subtle, lethal design. A simple length of iron engineered to break the enemy's shield and then break itself. The Roman Empire was not built on courage alone, or endless legions of men, but on engineering genius that transformed the unpredictable chaos of combat into a predictable science of annihilation. Every single piece of equipment, meticulously researched, refined, and issued from the boots on the ground to the towering siege engines, was a calculated, decisive advantage. To truly understand how Rome managed to conquer and hold a world that stretched from the sands of Africa to the cold forests of Britain, you must first look at the instruments of that conquest. Beginning with the infantryman's arsenal, a coordinated system of 3 perfectly integrated weapons that worked in brutal, deadly harmony. The first was the Pilum, the Roman throwing spear. At first glance it looked unremarkable, but unlike the crude, balanced javelins used by their Gallic or Germanic enemies, the Pilum was a testament to a subtle, lethal design philosophy. It featured a long, thin iron shank connected to a thick wooden shaft. When a Roman legionary hurled his Pilum across the battlefield, it was designed to achieve 2 catastrophic goals in a matter of milliseconds. First, the heavy iron head and the weighted tip gave it incredible penetrating force, allowing it to smash through the thickest wooden shields and even pierce hardened leather armor. But the true world-changing stroke of genius happened after impact. The shank, often intentionally made of softer, unhardened iron, was designed to bend and distort violently upon striking its target or the ground. This meant an enemy soldier couldn't simply pull the weapon out of his shield and throw it back at the Roman line. More devastatingly, with the Pilum's shaft bent into an awkward, unwieldy angle and the iron head lodged deep in the wood, the enemy's shield, his most vital piece of defense, became an unusable liability, too heavy, too awkward, and too unbalanced to carry into a desperate fight, often forcing the soldier to drop it entirely. Before the 2 armies had even met in the brutal, visceral press of the melee, Rome had already neutralized the enemy's primary defense. This was not just a weapon, it was a strategy of psychological disarmament that ensured the legionaries met a disarmed and demoralized foe. The Pilum broke the enemy line long before the swords were even drawn, defining the first, decisive phase of every engagement. Once the opposing forces were stripped of their shields and their formations broken into disorganized chaos, the Roman soldier turned to his signature weapon, the gladius, the short sword. In the messy, chaotic, bloody reality of ancient combat, many cultures from the Celts to the Greeks favored long, swinging blades that relied on momentum and slashing power. The gladius, however, was fundamentally different. It was a tool of discipline and efficiency. At only about 2 feet in length, it was compact, lightweight, and perfectly balanced for the tight, shoulder-to-shoulder formations of the Roman line. The legionary did not swing wildly, as cinematic depictions often suggest. He fought from behind the massive, layered protection of his large scutum shield, using the gladius for short, piston-like, brutal stabbing thrusts. These thrusts were proven to be far more lethal than simple slashes, penetrating directly into vital organs and causing deep, instantly incapacitating injuries that minimized the opportunity for the enemy to fight back. The compact size of the gladius was its key tactical genius. It allowed soldiers to fight in a near-impenetrable, tightly packed wall of men without fouling their movements or accidentally striking their comrades. The combination of the gladius and the defensive shield transformed the Roman legion into an indestructible fighting machine, dominating battlefields for 4 centuries and becoming the ultimate symbol of Rome's unwavering professionalism. It was the weapon of the close-quarters kill, deadly, disciplined, and unwavering. But before the Pilum flew and the gladius thrust, Roman infantry often deployed a hidden, subtle advantage, the plumbata, a small, lead-weighted throwing dart. These were not simply arrows, they were ingenious hand-thrown weapons carried clipped to the inside of the soldier's shield, ready for immediate deployment. The heavy lead weight attached near the tip was the key. It ensured that the plumbata flew with superior momentum, force, and accuracy compared to a simple, unweighted javelin. At the initial stages of battle, when the armies were closing on one another, Roman soldiers would unleash a sudden, dense, and unexpected rain of darts. This surprise attack was highly effective, disrupting enemy formations just as they prepared to charge, injuring frontline fighters, and weakening their morale before the main clash began. The plumbata was proof that Roman genius was often found in the small, clever details that provided just enough edge to tip the scales. It wasn't the most famous Roman weapon, but it was one of the cleverest, combining portability, surprise, and deadly efficiency into a single, devastating package. These three weapons, the shield-breaking Pilum, the compact gladius, and the disruptive plumbata, were the foundation of Roman dominance. They were not independent tools, but a coordinated, integrated system designed to break, pierce, and execute with disciplined ruthlessness. It was this relentless focus on tactical superiority, rather than just raw bravery, that allowed a city on the Tiber to create and sustain an empire. Yet the infantry was only the fist. To conquer an empire, Rome needed to unleash absolute destruction on its enemies, and the moment a city refused to yield, Rome would bring down the monsters of the siege lines. If you are fascinated by the sheer scope of Roman ingenuity and want to see how a handful of brilliant ideas can change the course of history, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We're dedicated to bringing you the most compelling and cinematic stories from the ancient world and beyond. Now, let's look at how Rome applied this deadly design philosophy to the conquest of entire cities. The ancient world had known city walls for millennia. They were the ultimate defense against invaders, able to starve out or exhaust any attacking army. But when Rome marched on a city, the battlefield changed forever. Across the horizon, their engineers unveiled terrifying, intricate machines of twisted sinew and massive timber machines that didn't just attack walls, they literally erased them. This was the unyielding terror of Rome's heavy artillery. Rome realized early that a prolonged war of attrition against fortified positions was too costly in both time and blood. They needed machines that could win the siege before the gates were ever breached. They developed an arsenal of heavy siege engines based on a core dichotomy: precision versus brute force. For surgical destruction and psychological targeting, they deployed the ballista, a gigantic, two-armed crossbow, often called Rome's deadly crossbow on steroids, powered by thick, heavily twisted bundles of sinew or hair. The ballista could hurl massive bolts or stone projectiles with devastating speed and a terrifyingly flat, direct trajectory. Unlike the arcing fire of a crude catapult, the ballista fired straight and fast, allowing it to accurately punch holes in walls, tear through enemy ranks, or even take out individual officers at immense range with a sickening thud. Its accuracy shocked and demoralized Rome's enemies, and the psychological impact was immense. Imagine facing a weapon that could kill you before you even saw it coming. The engineering required to build and tune these torsion-powered machines was immense, proving Roman warfare was as much about terrifying innovation as it was about unwavering discipline. Complementing the massive ballista was the Scorpio, often referred to as the Roman equivalent of a sniper rifle. This was a smaller, more portable, but equally deadly version of the ballista that could be quickly repositioned and manned by just one or two soldiers. The Scorpio fired smaller, iron-tipped bolts at incredible velocities, capable of piercing armor and shields with ease. These weapons were often positioned on fortress walls or hidden within field formations to catch enemies off guard with lethal precision. In sieges, dozens of scorpions firing together created a devastating, inescapable, deadly rain of bolts that served to pin down the defenders and crush their will to fight piece by piece. If the ballista was the sniper, the onager was the ancient world's heavy artillery. This siege engine earned its name, the Latin word for wild donkey, because of the violent, thunderous kick it produced when fired. The noise was the first killer. A deafening crack that echoed across the plains, the Roman answer to thunder. This raw sound alone, before the boulder landed, was designed to crush the spirit of any defender. The onager was a type of catapult that relied on pure, raw, smashing power. When its ropes were released, a massive arm whipped forward with a deafening crash, launching huge boulders in a high arc over city walls or into packed formations. These projectiles were designed to shatter gates, demolish fortifications, and send defenders scattering in panic. The Romans used the onager to relentlessly soften defenses, showing that brute force was a vital tool when precision wasn't necessary. Against the combined, relentless fire of these machines, defenses would inevitably crumble. But when the final infantry assault came, the city faced the most intimidating sight of all, the Roman siege tower. These massive, wheeled structures were mobile fortresses of doom, often several stories high. Covered in protective hides or wet materials to resist fire, they slowly, relentlessly rolled toward the city walls. Inside, soldiers climbed high up, ready to step directly onto the enemy ramparts, turning the wall's defensive advantage into a direct invasion point. Siege towers often carried archers and even small artillery pieces to rain destruction from above as they advanced. The sheer psychological terror of watching a towering war machine slowly rolling toward your walls was often enough to crush morale, making the fall of the city inevitable before the first Roman soldier ever set foot inside. This comprehensive array of artillery was defended by one of Rome's most enduring innovations, the lorica segmentata, the signature armor of the legions. Made of overlapping metal strips fastened with leather straps, it provided superior protection while remaining flexible enough for the soldier to maintain mobility and fight effectively. The segmented design meant it could deflect or absorb the force of swords, arrows, and spears more effectively than simple chainmail. Beyond the physical protection it offered, the lorica segmentata gave the legions a uniform, intimidating appearance, an army of gleaming steel that looked utterly unstoppable. This armor symbolized Rome's discipline and engineering brilliance, turning the Roman legionary into a near-indestructible war machine. The siege engine and the perfect armor ensured Rome could conquer any point on land. But to build an empire, they needed to conquer the edges of the world, and that required innovation to turn weakness into dominance. But the most insurmountable obstacle wasn't a wall or a shield. It was the ocean itself. How do you conquer a navy that is 10 times better than your own? Rome found a way, but it required a weapon so insane, it turned the sea into a street fight. Rome was, at heart, a land power. Yet, in their early, existential conflict with Carthage, the Punic Wars, they were faced with an insurmountable challenge, the mastery of the sea. Their enemies, the Carthaginians, were master sailors whose superior naval skills were considered unbreakable. Rome responded not with a better navy, but with a simple philosophy. If they couldn't beat them at sea, they would simply turn the ocean into a killing field on land. They invented the corvus, or the crow. This was a massive wooden bridge, equipped with a heavy, sharp spike at the end. When a Roman ship drew close to an enemy vessel, the corvus would drop down, the spike biting deep into the opposing deck, locking the two ships together. The Carthaginian captain was suddenly immobile. This innovation was the master key. Suddenly, sea battles were no longer about ramming or complex naval maneuvering, which favored the experienced Carthaginians. It immediately became the kind of hand-to-hand, disciplined infantry combat at which the Romans excelled. The corvus wasn't just a weapon, it was a tactical shift that neutralized the enemy's naval advantage and allowed Roman soldiers to fight as if they were still on solid ground. This single massive invention was absolutely crucial in turning the tide of the Punic Wars, showcasing how ingenuity could overcome a fundamental military weakness. On land, the legions needed complementary forces to complete their dominance. While Rome is often remembered for its infantry, its cavalry was equally crucial, armed with the formidable contus, or the cavalry spear. This was a long, heavy cavalry spear, sometimes reaching up to 4 meters in length, specifically designed for devastating shock charges. Unlike infantry spears, which were shorter for close-quarters fighting, the contus was held with both hands, allowing the cavalryman to deliver powerful, armor-piercing thrusts. When deployed in formation, a cavalry charge with lowered contus spears was a terrifying sight, a seemingly unstoppable wall of horsemen thundering forward, capable of smashing enemy lines and scattering troops in an instant. The contus gave Roman cavalry the overwhelming punch they needed to complement the infantry, ensuring no enemy on the open field could rest easy. But sometimes the most effective weapon wasn't a sword or a spear, but discipline itself, forged into a living, moving structure. This was the testudo formation, or the tortoise. This was a Roman battlefield tactic where soldiers interlocked their shields tightly above and around them, forming a nearly seamless armored shell. Arrows, rocks, and even flaming projectiles would rain down harmlessly on this dense, moving fortress. In sieges, the testudo allowed legionaries to approach walls under heavy fire, providing the protection needed to deploy battering rams or scale ladders. It wasn't flashy like a siege engine, but it was the living weapon of Rome, a potent demonstration of their unity and coordination. To their enemies, it must have seemed like an invincible machine, steadily advancing no matter what was thrown at it. The testudo formation made Roman legions both feared and admired, cementing their reputation as the most professional army of the ancient world. The engineering brilliance of the weapons and the tactical genius of the formations ensured Rome could win any single battle, on any terrain, and against any foe. Every single triumph we have detailed, from the Pilum to the Corvus, would have been utterly worthless without one final, unseen tool. It wasn't forged in iron or carved from timber. It was the true weapon of the empire, and it's the reason we still talk about Rome today. If you know a history buff who would enjoy seeing how these ancient inventions shaped the modern world, please take a moment to share this video with them. Swords rust. Cannons eventually fall silent, but the greatest war machine of the Roman Empire was silent, simple, and everywhere. It wasn't forged in fire or carved from timber, it was carved from the earth itself. The ultimate weapon, the one that ensured the empire's endurance for centuries, was the Roman road system. It might not look like a weapon, but the Roman road system was the most powerful tool of conquest Rome ever created. Stretching over 250,000 miles, these meticulously engineered stone arteries allowed legions to march faster than any enemy on the planet. They were designed with purpose, perfectly straight and incredibly durable. A Roman army with its heavy baggage train, its full complement of supplies, and its immense siege equipment could appear hundreds of miles away in just days, striking before opponents had time to organize, raise an army, or even properly prepare a defense. The roads were the logistical backbone of the empire, the silent, beating heart of Roman power. They allowed supplies, reinforcements, and vital communications to flow seamlessly across vast distances, ensuring that commanders could coordinate massive campaigns with incredible precision. Without the roads, the legion's swords and spears would have been useless, scattered forces unable to maintain cohesion. The roads ensured that if a province revolted, the emperor's retribution would arrive with brutal speed. If a border was threatened, legions would be there to meet the enemy. This silent weapon is why Rome didn't just fight wars, it built an empire that lasted centuries. Even after battles were won, the roads were the agents of peace, order, and Romanization. They held conquered territories together, spreading Roman law, trade, and culture. They linked disparate peoples to the heart of Rome, transforming a collection of conquered lands into a unified, functioning civilization. This vast, sophisticated infrastructure was the ultimate strategic advantage, proving that long-term dominance is won not just by the soldier on the front line, but by the engineer laying the foundation far behind him. The empire itself eventually crumbled, but the lessons it taught about engineering, about discipline, and about war can still be found beneath the modern world. The shadow of the legion's ingenuity stretches from the ancient battlefield to the modern street. We love hearing your thoughts on these epic historical moments. Which Roman innovation do you think was the most critical to their success? Let us know in the comments below. These 12 innovations were the foundation of a 2,000-year-old military tradition. They were designed not just to win a skirmish, but to establish total supremacy. From the shield-breaking Pilum to the terror of the siege tower, and ultimately to the silent, enduring power of the Roman road, Rome's arsenal stands as a monument to the power of human ingenuity. Their engineering prowess showed that the greatest empires are built not by the biggest armies but by the cleverest minds. The legacy of these Roman weapons still echoes through time, visible in every modern military's focus on logistics, standardized equipment, and combined tactical assaults. If you enjoyed this journey into the arsenal of the ancient world, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us for more epic stories from history's greatest empires.